they look back and they see one. Clear as day. It walks 5 feet away from my audio recorder. And then you hear my friend. We just saw Bigfoot. Holy crap.
Welcome to another episode of the Exploring Name. I'm Luke.
I'm Dustin.
Today we have Luke on the podcast, and he's talking about Bigfoot tree structures, his encounters with Bigfoot. He had a lot of interesting things to say about tree structures.
Yeah. He's got some of them posted on his TikTok as well. We'll post a link to that so you can go and check those out.
We got new shirts, if you haven't seen.
Yeah, look at that. I'd show you my back, but I'll turn around and knock everything over. Maybe Luke can.
We are the host with the most ghost.
That's it.
I think everyone can see it.
I can't see it. You're showing the wall. Now you're showing... Yep, that's somewhere in there. That's good. That's perfect. The hosts with the most ghosts. I dig it.
You gonna go hop into this episode?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hi, Luke.
Hey, how's it going?
How are
How
you?
you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good to hear. Well, my name is
Yeah.
Dustin.
Hello, Dustin. And I think we have another Luke here, don't we?
Yep.
So,
Yes, sir.
I think the phone said you guys are from, like, Pennsylvania area?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Where you from?
I'm out in Indiana,
Oh, okay. Okay.
so a
Yeah.
little ways. You guys are familiar with Strange Familiars?
No.
That podcast?
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well, that's Timothy Renner. He's out there in Pennsylvania area. So
Oh.
I would definitely check him out. He's got a pretty good podcast going on. He talks about all manner of things, kind of like you guys. But yeah, I just figured you guys might have heard of him. It's a good podcast. I would definitely recommend checking out Strange Familiars.
Yeah, we'll
Not to
definitely have to look into that.
try and plug anybody else, but yeah, that's a recommend.
Yeah.
So
No. But yeah, man, tell us a little bit about yourself. You into Bigfoot research or?
yeah, so I started getting into Bigfoot in about 2015, and I, like so many people, I had read books and heard things here and there throughout the years growing up, and checked out books in libraries, and just kind of thought it was a neat little subject, but didn't put a whole lot of stock into it.
Mhm.
And then I started listening to podcasts a little bit around 2014 or so, and started hearing accounts in Indiana. And I just thought that was crazy because living here, when I think of Indiana, I think of cornfields and and a lot of open, empty space. And there is
Yeah.
a fair bit of that, but the good southern half of the state is mostly forested. There's a lot of farming up around Indy and above, but once you get down south, it's heavily wooded, and it wouldn't take anything for an experienced bushman to walk from one end of the state to the other without being seen. So there's plenty of space down there. But I kept hearing
Yeah.
these reports down in Indiana, and after a bit, I said, you know what? Like, I live here. Like, let's find out for myself. Like, I've heard enough secondhand. So I started going out, started poking around, just picked a random spot on the map, picked a park, and went out with a coworker who was also semi-interested. And first day we went out, a whole lot of nothing. Just a good day hiking and enjoying the weather. But so we weren't overly convinced, just all normal things. We were off trail and poking around, and it was a good time. So the second time I went out, parked in the exact same spot, but I went across the road in the opposite direction. And this time I was by myself, and it completely changed everything. So at the time, I had started following a guy named Nathan Rio, Utah Sasquatch. He was posting a bunch on YouTube, and he had posted a few things of what he thought of what he was seeing, and said, if you guys are going out, like, look for this similar thing and see if it's something you notice, and if not, then maybe it's just me, or maybe it's not related. And so I started doing that, and he was heavily into stick structure and a lot of subtlety with a lot of them. And so that was one of the things I started looking at, was these potential stick structures. And a lot of what I found matched up with what he was talking about and what other people were talking about. And the thing with stick structures, I'm a big proponent of them. I understand why some people are on the fence about it. Sticks fall in the woods all the time, and a lot of times they can fall in funny, funky ways.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start seeing things, you get one or two things, you don't put a lot of stock in that. When you get like 12 things all in a row and they're kind of pointing in the same direction, it's enough to take notice of. And I have found that when you follow these, like I said, a lot of them are pretty subtle. You'll get one stick leaned up against a tree. That's not a big deal. But when you get three of them leaned up against the same tree, and then the next tree has another three leaned up, and they're all kind of pointing in the same direction, it
Mhm.
looks weird and it grabs your attention.
Yeah.
And so I have found following those that I will get into more ornate, more elaborate structures. The further away from like parking lots and roads that you
Mm-hmm.
get a little more elaborate. And that is where I have had the predominant amount of my experiences, is because I was following these lines kind of through the woods. And I think most of them are just kind of markers. They're usually not bunched up and close together. Usually you can see another one from one where you're standing.
Yeah.
And so you'll get kind of weird things woven in together in ways that are blocked by like a canopy above them.
Mm-hmm.
And so things that don't make sense. I see a lot of triangles, a lot of squares of things laid on the ground. I found a few asterisks kind of like wedged up. That really grabs your attention when you see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the first time I saw a bunch of these structures pointing up this hill, and so I followed it. And when I got up to the top, found a few possible footprints. Nothing I was really convinced by, but they, had the right shape and were about the right size. Spacing has been pretty accurate, but a lot of our forests are heavily, uh, there's a lot of debris, a lot of leaves, and so you don't really see a track that you can really cast like in the mud, because there's not a lot of bare ground.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I followed that, went up over the hill, down the hill, and came to an area that just kind of put all the hairs on the back of my head, neck, standing up, and gave me the heebie-jeebies. And I kind of pushed through it a little bit, and then I got whooped at. and had a tree knock in front of me, and it wasn't, I don't know, 100 yards from me.
Oh,
At
wow.
that point, I decided I had had enough. It was my first experience of being out there by myself, and prior to that day, I wasn't convinced they were in Indiana, and so that was enough for me. So I turned around and headed out.
Yeah.
So that kicked everything off.
Wow. That's crazy. That's so these structures that you were coming across, like if you aren't aware of what you're looking for, they're probably not really noticeable.
They're they're really subtle, especially if you're like on a trail or near a road and just kind of looking into the woods. You'll see something. Like I said, it might be a tree that's kind of wrapped around something, or a teepee looking where you got three or four sticks kind of leaned together. A
Hmm.
lot of them are, there's no root ball. They're just kind of freestanding. Um, Sometimes I'll come across like whole trees where the root ball is like floating in the air and there's no depression. And so that came from somewhere nearby, but not that exact spot.
Hmm.
So we run across a lot of things like that. Um, but as you follow them and kind of get used to seeing them, then you'll come across more of them.
That's really interesting. Um, we've kind of been going out. Well, yeah, a couple of times we went out in our area. There's been some claims of Bigfoot sightings, so we've been recently going out and checking it out. But I'm not familiar with like with Bigfoot hunting or searching for Sasquatch, so I'm not sure
What
what
to look
kind of
for.
yeah, what kind of signs and stuff.
Yeah. A lot of my findings and how you guys found me is I do have the TikTok, Forest Folks, and I
Hmm.
throw a lot of what I find and what I'm seeing up there for people to look at. I like I like sharing things that I have personally come across. I'm not a big fan of. I guess there's a couple other channels out there that all they do is reshare, and nothing's original to them.
Yeah.
Um, there are a lot of videos of things that I have seen of examples that you guys can check out. I can also shoot you an email with a couple pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
There's some
that'd
for
be
it.
pretty
great.
some pretty interesting things there.
Yeah.
So I'll do that after this. But yeah, I definitely recommend getting out there and just hanging out. Worst case, you guys are just having a hike. So there's
Yeah.
really not a downside.
Right. And what do you think about gifting? Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, yep. I have made attempts in a few areas. There's a place I call Three Penny Hill where I have left a few things like pennies and shells and whatnot. I've not had interaction there. I have a buddy who has a spot that he's been gifting at for almost 30 years, and he occasionally gets some response with that.
Hmm.
He'll leave out stuffed animals and like marbles and things, and occasionally he'll get like fossils brought in and left in
Oh,
his
wow.
spot, and he's got like clamshells, and so he'll move those around and he'll put them on top of each other and put things inside, and uh, sometimes he'll come back and like I said, there'll be like fossils inside, or there was a dead frog stuck inside a completely closed shell at one point.
Oh, wow.
Um, he had a stuffed animal that was up in a tree, and it disappeared for over a year, and then it showed back up. So that's pretty cool. He's had some exciting things happen in that area, and he's had a few visuals. Um, I've gotten close, but I have not had a clear visual as of yet. I've had a
Yeah.
few like could it, maybe not sort of things.
Hmm.
where I'll see motion, and often it's in an accompaniment of, like wood knocks or something that I'll have
Hmm.
going on, and then I'll catch a blur of motion go by, but I didn't see it. Um, I did have my best potential visual was 2 years ago. I was in an area by myself and was walking through. I guess, to back it up a little bit, me and two other guys had been in this spot a couple months before, and it was our first time being there. And we had fanned out a little bit, and I was separate, but within, I don't know, 40 yards of them. And I got to this area first. I kind of like stepped over a log, and all the hairs went up on the back of my neck and just kind of felt like I was being watched. And so I paused and I looked over at them. And as soon as they stepped over the log, I watched them visibly have the same reaction that I did. And within 5 seconds, we started getting tree knocks on three sides of us that were pretty loud and going all over the place. And that carried on for a good 5 minutes or so. And then it kind of faded off, and we were kind of at the edge of a hill. And so down and further into the woods, we heard a whole bunch of crows go off, and something had jumped them, spooked them. They were not happy down that way, but um, we have a bunch of those knocks on audio. I had started carrying an audio recorder, and so we captured a bunch of that, and that is a pretty good clip that I have of those knocks going on. And I had returned to that area by myself a couple months later, and as I got to around about the same spot, I was looking around, and over and down this hill, it looked like there was this black round shape looking at me.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, it's solid black. Like, is this the end of a log, potentially? But as I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? It's round except for the top, kind of has a point to it, and it really looks like a head looking right at me over the top of this hill. And so I looked down to grab my phone to see if I can't zoom in and maybe get a little more detail. And as soon as I look back up, it's gone. So I had seen something that moved. Raccoons aren't that dark. We really don't have black bear here in Indiana. There's a few people who report them every once in a while. Um, but this was just whatever it was moved, and so it wasn't there by the time I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tried to find it again.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunately how a lot of the potential sightings go. Like you see something, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Was you able to get like a size estimate of it, like how big it was compared to, I don't know, maybe the trees that it was by?
Well, it was down on the ground. It wasn't near any trees. Um, I would say it was probably around basketball size. Um,
Oh, wow.
which is similar size to maybe a raccoon.
Mhm.
But it was pitch black, solid
Yeah.
black. So the only thing it could have been was like a burnt log. Um, I don't have any other
Yeah.
explanation to what it is.
Now you
So
said that you have audio of the tree knocks?
yeah, I do. I started carrying an audio recorder like 2017, I think.
Mhm.
Um, there was another incident where me and a friend were out, and we had we were on like an old logging road,
Mhm.
and we had paused. There was a little bit of a clearing, and just kind of a bare spot in the dirt, and we paused, and I bent down to look and see if there were any tracks. Uh, we'd seen some turkey prints earlier in the day, and as soon as I bent down, something jumped up 30 yards from us and took 3 steps and audibly stopped. And it was a very boom, boom, boom stop. And we looked at each other and we're like, what was that? Because it sounded very bipedal, or like a four-legged animal bounded with all 4 legs each time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stopped and we looked at each other, and then we started moving towards it. And it did the exact same thing. Another boom, 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 and stopped by a tree. And this time we both caught a glimpse of it, and we saw just this blur of motion. And whatever it was fairly good, good size. It was probably it looked about 3 foot to us, but it was down an incline about a foot. So it was about 4 foot tall where we saw the motion. And the stop, go, it's not typical, like whitetail behavior. When you jump a deer, tail goes up, and they half the times they'll snort and they'll run off into the distance. This is not that. It ran, stopped, and so we pushed forward again and spread out a little bit to see if one of us couldn't get a better view of it. And we're heading towards where we had heard it stop the last time. And I hear something move through the brush behind me going across the path we had just left. And as soon as it got to the other side, it starts tapping on the tree. And we're hearing these little, and that gets answered in front of us by a similar tapping. And this goes back and forth for almost 10 minutes, where these two things are tapping and they're moving a little bit, and we can hear, where they move as these taps change. And at one point, something huffed at us, and then it just faded, and that was it. And after that point, I said, I need to carry an audio recorder, because that was crazy. What else is out here tapping on trees like that and walking around you? It's
Right.
not coyotes, it's not deer,
No.
definitely wasn't woodpeckers. So
Wow.
we caught a glimpse of something. More than likely, it was a Sasquatch, but I really wish I had gotten that clear as day sighting.
Yeah. Now, do you have any audio that you had posted of any of these?
I don't think I've put any audio up on TikTok. I have a few samples that I've shared with a few other people. Was it last year? Yeah, I think last year I was actually at a buddy's farm, and we were out. He's got just this big. He's got a pond and cornfields around out right next to the state park. I can't remember what the name of the state park is off the top of my head. I think it's Lieber State Park, but we were out there 11 o'clock at night, just hanging around a fire, just hanging out. And I had set out one of my audio recorders, and we were hanging out and got to be late and decided to pack up. And so I grabbed the audio recorder and brought it back to us near the fire. And then we started hearing coyotes go off, and then there was something else. And it had this long kind of howl to it that ended in like a ooh ah at the end. And we caught that a couple times, and it's really faint. And unfortunately, like, the sound of the fire is going over it. So it's not a great audio. I did send that off to a guy named Monongahela, and he said it's got a lot of the telltale signs that it could have been a Sasquatch.
Mm.
but it's so faint he can't rule out the possibility of an owl.
Yeah.
Um, but he said, it's not coyote. And when we were there hearing it, we could tell it definitely wasn't coyote. And whatever it was a mile away based on Google Maps.
Hmm.
So that was
Have you
that was pretty cool.
have you ever had tried to have anybody like enhance the audio?
I He's an audio guy, and he said he couldn't do anything with it.
Oh, okay.
I've cleaned it up as best I can with headphones. You can kind of make it out. Um, Even then, it's awful. Um, but it's the only potential call that I've gotten,
Hmm.
and so it's exciting for me. I've gotten various knocks throughout the years that I've been doing this. Like I said, I think it was 2017 or something that I first got the audio recorder and take it with me every time. Um,
Yeah,
a
you
lot
don't
of
want to
times
miss
it's
nothing.
nothing. Yeah, a lot of times it's nothing, just us hiking through the woods and talking. Um, every once in a while, we'll get some knocks. Most of the time, the audio recorder doesn't pick up what we hear, and so it's strapped to my backpack, and so you just get a lot of sound of us walking through the leaves, unless
Mhm.
we're stopped and just standing in the spot, and then we get the knocks. Then it doesn't pick up real well.
Yeah.
Um, there was a study done by a group out in the Ouachita, the North American Wood Ape Society. They did
Hmm.
a study about how sound travels, and from their results, if you're like walking through an area and you hear a knock, that's like you're able to hear it over the sound of you walking around, it's more than likely going to be within 200 yards of you, which is pretty close.
Hmm.
Uh, they they found that a lot of the trees and hills and stuff will block that sound, so it won't travel near as far as what you think it will. Um, there are some assumptions with that the terrain has to be heavily wooded and um, hills and things like that. So
Right.
if it's higher up, it's going to travel a little bit further just because there's not as much brush to go through.
Hmm.
Um, it's something that I try and keep in mind. Like if we're hearing them and they sound loud to us, it's probably pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. I'd like to get out there
Yeah,
and hear some whoops or some tree knocks.
Yeah, right. That'd be cool.
yeah. I've only heard a whoop on one occasion, and that was when I went out there the first time by myself. I don't like going out by myself if I can avoid it. Uh, there's all manner of reasons, but
Hmm.
we do have cougar here in Indiana. There's not a lot of them, but they are around.
Yeah.
Come across a
Yeah.
tree that was shredded by one. You see all the claw marks.
Yeah.
Now, when you heard that whoop, did you feel like infrasound with it? Because they say when they whoop, there's like infrasound sometimes. Did you feel that by any chance?
I have not. I have not had a time where I felt like I was physically affected. There are moments where like you just go on edge.
Hmm.
There was a time where I had sat down and was having just a little bit of a snack and really was really relaxed and like, man, I could take a nap. Like everything is so peaceful and calm and this is just perfect. And then out of nowhere, I like my body reacted. I shot up and was spinning around and acted like I had heard a gunshot go off,
Mm.
over the top of my head, and I was trying to find out where it had come from. And after like a second of me spinning around looking, I was like, why am I reactive? Like I didn't hear anything. Like nothing changed.
Hmm.
Why am I suddenly so on edge like this? Um,
Yeah.
I have had a few times where my audio acts weird. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of times in conjunction where we're getting some of these knocks or activity, I'll get a weird feedback, and sometimes the audio is just completely unusable. It's shot because we're getting this electronic feedback, and I have not been able to replicate it. I've been using these audio recorders for years. I have hours and hours where I'm just hiking through before and after where there's nothing. Um, I'll I've run it through a few tests here at home, around the house, putting them near different electronics, different places, and just nothing. And it's just only in these situations where I've gotten kind of a weird feedback. Uh, Sometimes it's like a constant buzzing or a popping or clicking that's going on. And
Mm.
I don't know why it's only happening in these scenarios.
So this has happened on more than one occasion with multiple devices?
It had, well, just one device for me. I recently got a second audio recorder, and I've not had it happen with it.
Mm.
But one of my friends has had it happen with his audio recorder as well. Um, and
Mm.
at the same time, like when we're together, both of our audio recorders have done this
At the same time?
in conjunction with activity. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's
That's weird.
interesting. Yeah, I try and be as skeptical as I can be.
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of room to go, to the nines with a lot of theories and thoughts
Hmm.
in this. And I've got a pretty strong scientific background, and I know a lot of everyday ordinary animals do really extraordinary things.
Hmm.
And so I try not to jump to that all the time. But sometimes you just scratch your head and say, no, I don't know what box to put this in because
Right.
it's weird and I've never come across this. So, and
Yeah.
that's one of those things, it is reported. A lot of people have said similar. And so, it's ticking that checkbox, but I don't know. More results are needed.
Yeah. Now, what do you? Oh, sorry, Luke. Go ahead. It looks like you had a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's your theory on Bigfoot? What do you think he is?
I try and stay pretty flesh and blood.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of the behaviors that are talked about coincide with a flesh and blood creature. Uh,
Hmm.
Even some of the more questionable things, some of those behaviors are seen in everyday animals. You know, there is
Yeah.
there's a video that I came across, a couple videos on TikTok. This guy out in, I think he's North Carolina or something. He had this camera, trail camera on a little nature trail, and was just getting videos of birds and skunks and things walking around. And one day his camera disappeared, and so he looked around all over the place, couldn't find it. So he went out and got another camera and set it out in the same spot. And when he came back to check the second camera, the first camera had been returned and dropped off in the exact spot where it was taken from. And so he was
Oh, wow.
all excited and like, I caught what or whoever did this. And
Mm.
come to find out, a coyote had taken the camera originally, and he was able to recover the initial camera's footage. And so you see this coyote take the camera and disappear with it for 3 days and then bring it back to the exact same spot. And that is something that a lot of people in the Bigfoot field would 100% say, "Oh, Bigfoot, this was a gifting. They took, my toy or my marble or stuffed animal and then brought it
Mm.
back 3 days later to the same spot." But that is something that coyotes do,
Yeah.
apparently. So that's interesting. Um, Another thing is like uh, people have talked about being gifted dead snakes that are like tied up in a knot, and that is a behavior that roadrunners will do, um,
Oh.
especially as a mating uh, courtship. They will often gift prey animals, and snakes is a common thing. And as they manipulate them, they work them into knots. And so that is something that occasionally roadrunners will do. And, if you don't
That's
have roadrunners
interesting.
in your area, obviously it's not them. Um, but weird behavior from normal animals isn't uncommon, I guess. Um,
Right.
but I think Bigfoot is more of a flesh and blood. But it is also hard to ignore that there are a lot of weird things that go on, like mind speak or talking about orbs that people report, lights in the woods.
Hmm.
A lot of that happens in similar areas. Is it related? Maybe it might be. I
Yeah.
personally have not experienced anything that makes me, I guess, jump to that step. I'm open to it. That would be super exciting and fun to have something like that happen. But until
Yeah.
it happens, I can't get all the way there. But I love hearing about it.
Yeah. That actually kind of answers what my question was. I was going to ask you what you thought on Bigfoot being interdimensional.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and I think that stuff happens. I think people see things doing this sort of stuff all the time. Um, you know, you get there's no reason you can't have like ghosts or uh, other dimensional beings popping in and out of the woods. I just don't
Hmm.
know that it's related to Bigfoot. You might just have two different phenomenon happening in the same location.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
do think people are experiencing these things for sure.
I
Yeah. You
agree.
get enough people talking about it. Now, how do you know? I think we might have talked about this, but how do you know if something you find is really from Bigfoot, or you know what I'm saying?
Can
Yeah,
you
that's a
tell?
that's a fantastic question. Um, I try not to go 100% on most things. I try and frame things in percentage wise. With like with stick structures, you come across them, and based on where it is and what type of structure it is, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in it. Sticks do
Hmm.
fall in the woods all the
Hmm.
time, and they can fall in
Right.
weird ways. And I've had them fall in weird ways in my yard. And I know there's not Bigfoot in my backyard, um, but you really have to assess what's around it. Like I said, if you've got just one thing, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock on it. Um, but once you get thing after thing after thing after thing, then it starts to be more of a question mark, and you start paying attention. And like you said earlier, if you start having experiences in these same areas that you're not having in other areas, then you look at the picture as a whole. And I have to say, 90% that a lot of what I've come across is probably related.
Now, when you say you see a whole bunch of tree structures like lined up, do you think it's just like a path for them to take that they know they're taking so they know where they are? Or do you think it's for like other Bigfoots to be like, hey, well, I'm here and like a tutorial type of thing?
I think it runs the gamut. Mm, a lot of them, I think, are marking areas of travel, or they're marking where you might potentially run across a human trail or a road or something like that. And so,
Hmm.
viewing from the woods, you'll see these. A lot of X's, I think, are done kind of mark a boundary, like this is a safe area. This is
Hmm.
uh, going past this, you might run into people, so just be aware.
Mm-hmm.
sort of deal.
Hmm.
And most of them aren't real close together. When people are making a path, they're fairly close together when they're marking things. These are more spread out. They're in a wider area. They're not quite so linear. So 50 yards to your left or right, there might be one.
Mm-hmm.
So you do a whole lot of zigzagging kind of in through the woods. It's not always the most linear path of travel.
Yeah.
And then you'll come across huge areas where there's just nothing. That's kind of the big teller is that you know walk through the woods and you don't see anything, and then you come to an area where there's just you know 10 or 15 of them, and then after that there's nothing. Why are they only in this spot?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What would you
Yeah.
say your
I
best evidence is?
I think a lot of the audio. Um, Back on the structures, I do recommend like going to an area where you're relatively confident that there aren't any Bigfoot in the area, like a city park or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
just see what's natural, and get an idea of what the baseline is, and then when you see something that's outside of it, that's when you pay attention. But yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of my audio is exciting for me. A lot of the structures, some of the bigger things are exciting. What's cool is seeing how the structures have changed over the years. Um,
Mm.
I've visited several areas, multiple years in a row, and just kind of kept track of how long these structures last. And it seems like most of them last like 5, 7 years, something like that, and then
Yeah.
they degrade beyond all recognition at that point. And usually in that time frame, there's not a whole lot that gets added. Once everything's
Mhm.
gone, then they might come back through and add more things. There have only been a few places where it seems like every time I go back, there's something new that's been added, and that's always exciting. And those are areas where they're visited, and especially if you can corroborate that with other people who say that they've had experiences in that location, then you can kind of get a baseline for hot spots. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the audio I really like. Um, my most exciting audio, and just hearing it isn't the greatest, but the story is. I actually have audio of my friends having a sighting, and
Oh.
so that's I really love that one because you can hear their reaction, you can hear stuff moving.
Hmm.
You can't tell from the audio what is moving, but based on their uh, visual
Hmm.
encounter, it's really cool because I had me and two guys were out at this spot where my buddy earlier I mentioned he's got this gifting area he's been doing for a few years, and
Hmm.
he's seen them a couple times in this area. And being out there, we've heard things moving around us, and me and him and another guy were in this spot, and we were going to be camping at a park nearby, and my wife was coming up, and we were out there in his area, and I got a call from her saying that she was close and wanted me to come meet her. So I left, and this is the first time we'd ever split up. Uh, Before, anytime we'd gone in, we'd gone in together and then walked out together. And this
Hmm.
is the first time we had split up. And so I left and I set out an audio recorder to leave for the night. And as soon as I am out of visual range, they're a little bit further down and they look back and they see one clear as day walk kind of over this hill and into this thick patch of brush. And it walked 5 feet away from my audio recorder.
Oh
And
wow.
on the audio, yeah, you hear some shuffling going on
Hmm.
and you hear a blue jay. that was following this thing, and it's going off, and you hear it kind of fade in and fade out. It, this Bigfoot walks, kind of shuffles really quick past the audio recorder, and then you hear my friends. They react to seeing it, and then one of them whoops at it to try and get it to slow down. He's like, whoop, and it ignores them, and it carries on. And a little bit later, they come up and they're like, Luke, we just saw a Bigfoot. Holy crap! It literally walked 5 feet from your audio recorder, and they talk about what they had seen, and so that's really cool. I really like it. Just listening to the audio as an outsider, you just hear shuffling, which could have been anything, but hearing their recounting of what happened, it's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. What like how do you stay safe out there while you're searching for Bigfoot?
Like I said, I usually try and go with a buddy. There's not a whole lot that we have to worry about here in Indiana. We do have timber rattlesnakes, which get pretty big,
Mm.
and I did run into one of those about 3 years ago. That was almost a bad situation. Um, I was moving downhill, and you're always moving faster when you're going downhill, and it was an area that had been uh, had a controlled burn earlier in the year, and so everything was really open, and it was easy to get going pretty quick. And going downhill, and came up on this big rattlesnake that was trying to get away from me, and I was 3 feet away from it before it curled up and rattled. And I screamed, I jumped back, and obviously this is all caught on audio, and you hear this thing rattling, and it was awesome. I love snakes, and so it was exciting, but it was way too close.
Yeah.
So you want to move slower in these areas where
Mhm.
you could potentially run into a rattlesnake or um, cottonmouth or something like that, and
Mhm.
just give them a chance to get away from you, because they generally want to get away from you. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, we don't really have bears. There are coyotes, there are mountain lions, and bobcat. Again, they generally don't want anything to do with you. So beyond that, the real danger is getting lost. Um, you want to make sure that you have a good compass with you. Um, the GPS on your phone is great, but there are areas where it won't work, and so you need to
Mhm.
know, which direction to at least find a road.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, ticks are a big concern. So I recommend permethrin spray. You spray that on your clothes, the night before you're going hiking, and let that dry. You don't want the wet stuff to be on your skin. Once it dries, it's completely harmless to you, and it will stay on your clothes for a week or two, even through the wash. So,
Oh,
and that will kill
nice.
ticks on contact. So you definitely want to spray your pants, your shoes, maybe your backpack or a jacket if you're wearing one. Wear
Yeah.
socks. So, but I still seem to find ticks on me every year. So
Yeah.
you
It
just gotta
happens.
try and catch them early
Yeah.
before they
Yeah.
dig in.
Yeah.
But no,
Well,
I don't carry a firearm, anything. Oh, you guys there?
Yeah, I'm
instances
here.
of people.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I've heard instances people carrying firearms out there looking for Bigfoot and then having aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Some people think that they don't like firearms. There seems to be enough reports that they know what a firearm is.
Mhm.
mhm.
Definitely.
I think if they see you, brandishing it, or if it's readily visible, that I think they know what they are. and I could definitely see that being a factor. But if it were concealed, I wouldn't think that they would have any idea that it was there. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, it just kind of depends on where your thought is. If they do like mind speak and can read your minds, then maybe they do. I don't know.
Right.
But I don't feel the need to carry one on me. Like I said, we don't have a whole lot in this area that I have to worry about that I would need a firearm for.
Yeah. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people use it for safety. They feel more comfortable having it on them just in case something does go wrong. They have it on the side or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not against it by any means. I just, if I was in bear country, I think that might be a different matter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always a concern as well.
Right. I think people sometimes more so than the animals.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're familiar with animals, they can be more predictable. People are just
Yeah.
unpredictable. You never know what they're
Yeah.
going to
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, Luke, did you have any other questions or?
No.
do. I don't think.
Are we talking to me ahead?
Yeah. Uh, Luke, the other Luke, did you have anything that you wanted to plug or any socials or anything like that you wanted to get out there for the people?
Just my TikTok is, the best place to get a hold of me and see a lot of what I've come across. They're the Forest folks. Uh, that's where I post a lot of things. So give me a check out and shoot me a question if you guys have any.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure to share your TikTok when we make this episode public.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. We really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys do get out and find anything, I look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we'll definitely let you know. But we won't hold you up any longer. We appreciate your time and hope you have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been fun. Thanks.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
I thought it was pretty interesting. He had a lot of different stuff to say.
Yeah, he did. I would like to learn more about like what we're looking for whenever we're out there looking for Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I'd like to hear some of them audio clips that he has. Did he say that he posted it on TikTok?
No, he didn't post the audio clips on TikTok. He just posted like this tree structures and stuff like that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to another episode of Exploring the Unknown. We really enjoyed having Luke on the podcast. I enjoy having Luke on the podcast every day, to be honest with you.
I'm here every day.
We got to get out there and see, do a little bit more Bigfoot hunting. There's been some other claims in different areas around our hometown, well, our current location, and we went out there not too long ago, recently. Not sure what we're doing out there, but we're trying. We're looking for them.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah, this is a great episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that little bell notification if you're on YouTube so you can get notified whenever we drop a new episode of Exploring the Unknown. We post every Sunday. And if you have had any experiences or encounters with the paranormal or cryptids, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to have you on the show and talk about it. But do you have anything else you want to add, Luke?
No.
All right, so before we hop off here, we got the Would You Rather. Are you ready for the Would You Rather?
I am.
Sounds like Athena's ready too. Would you rather spend a night in an ancient cemetery surrounded by eerie whispers and shadowy figures, or explore a desolate, fog-shrouded forest rumored to be the hunting grounds of the Wendigo?
You should already know that answer. I'm going with second one.
Going to go check out the Wendigo.
I want to go see the Wendigo.
Well, it says, and in this one it says, choose wisely. Your safety may depend on it. So, what are you going to do to prepare for this?
Wendigo. I'm still going with the Wendigo.
What are you going to do to prepare for it?
What am I going to do to prepare? Oh,
Yeah.
God. I don't know.
You just going to walk into the woods and hope that something happens?
Yeah, kind of.
You ain't going to take no audio recorders, no cameras, nothing like that?
Well, yeah, I'm going to take stuff like that, but I'm going to see what happens, too.
Let's see, what would I choose? You
would be more the first one, I think.
I think I probably would. I would probably choose the ancient cemetery, but I'm playing it in my head. I think I'd have to take the cemetery.
I should go.
I'll come looking for you when you go missing. I think that's it, man. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.